The Witcher Season 2 has finally released on Netflix, and I'm excited to announce that they've done it. They've finally figured out how to do a Lady Chosen one that, and brace yourselves here, is actually good. Been a long road, getting from there to here. Arguably, they have an even harder task than what Disney had with Rey. Disney. Unlike her, Ciri actually is the most important person in her world. The pitfalls presenting for conveying such a character, especially from something like Netflix, as we all know, approaches every adaptation with a sledgehammer of overbearing empowerment, even if it makes no sense or takes away from the characters, is quite staggering, and quite impressive to see it being avoided after all this time. Whoever decided on all those sidestepping decisions in regards to Ciri's on-screen depiction should be awarded smartest writer at Netflix. However, considering Henry Cavill is involved, living embodiment of the Emperor of Mankind himself, I imagine they're all just too afraid of upsetting the walking Witcher law manual to try anything else. In which case, every writer's room should have a scary Henry Cavill dressed as Geralt stood behind them at all times. Okay, so we have this moment a beloved character dies. This feels too heavy. I feel we should break the tension with a self-aware referential joke. The audience will love it, trust me. Whilst we didn't get too much time dedicated to actually getting to know who Ciri was during Season 1, Season 2 is very much dedicated to her, and whilst I wish they would have followed Geralt more, it does make sense, as she was the character in most need of development, considering her huge role in the plot's events. We needed a reason to care about her as a character. In fact, I might say the show hinges on it. We have to feel the same protective attitude that Geralt and Yen feels. The pride when she succeeds, enough to invest you in seeing them avoid all the terrible events unfolding around her. Pretty monumental task for a series on Netflix only in its second season. But I feel they understood this, to the point they even had to take away from the larger world building and other characters just to flesh out this one character. Whilst the show is far from perfect, in fact in my experience I would call it average, it does some things with its characters that I feel are getting overlooked, things that should be commended and encouraged, such as their portrayal of Ciri. Compare her training to Rey's training. Ciri is really struggling through her course. Every time she fails, it leaves an impact on her. And the only thing she's got really going for her isn't her powers or her abilities, it's just sheer determination. Now, I'm not saying The Witcher Season 2 is a masterpiece or anything, far from it. I think it's pretty average. I want to point out these character points because it's really important to recognise progress when we see it. This is good character progress. When Ciri takes an interest in Triss's dress and then tries to dress more feminine presenting to impress her, who at the only time was the only woman at Kaer Morhen, she's mocked and belittled for it by some of the other witches. Now, whilst this is normal, especially in close groups of male friends, they forget that she's not just another one of them, nor do they know really when they've overstepped into harmful insult. Now, whilst in another world, they'd present Ciri as never even wanting to touch a dress and scowling at any mention of anything deemed traditionally feminine. This genuinely upsets Ciri, as she's never hated being a princess, never rejected her femininity. She enjoys the finer things in life and doesn't see a reason why she must reject those things to be strong and still be a warrior.
Princess Cirilla of Sintra. Pleasure to meet you.
As she mentioned later in the episode, her grandmother wore dresses and she was a strong fighting queen and winning battles. You can do both. Ciri never resented or rejected femininity. She just didn't like being restricted into one type of lifestyle and not being able to do other things. Like a well-rounded person, she wanted the options to be who she wanted to be without the strict guidelines of what's expected of her. There are many paths to strength, and my gods, was it so refreshing to see and hear this. For so long as I can remember, writers have been pursuing this idea that strong female characters need to reject femininity in herself to be strong. To be strong, you must emulate strong, gruff, emotionally closed-off men in fiction, as if they're desperately trying to play catch-up. It's great to finally see writers shrugging off that insecurity and stepping out of their old shadow of masculine heroes. See, there are many paths to power. A woman wearing a dress who understands politics and royal etiquette can still move armies, can still fight, and most importantly, can still fail and be vulnerable. Nothing dares us to characters to see them as human beings and to see them struggle with very human failings. The most mature thing a writer can do for a female character is to make them not perfect. To show that it's okay and only natural and human to fail. And boy does Ciri fail. In an episode-long sequence that reminds me of the opening of Horizon Zero Dawn, if every other moment was Aloy getting decked in the face by a tree, whilst nothing groundbreaking, she doesn't immediately beat the training course or see some way around it that no one else could, to show that she's smarter than the very course and the challenge itself. In fact, after getting knocked off again and again, she simply continues to approach it as anyone else would. There is no loopholes. Only the chosen one could see that no one else could to show how the audience how special she is. She simply keeps going, which is something far more relatable. She's there to train like any other Witcher, and she's not getting any special treatment from the characters or the script. Even the fact that she's basically the most powerful and important person in the world is treated less like a pass for the character to ascend above the plot's threat and have everyone around her constantly call her amazing when she can solve any problem without them.
All I ever think about are consequences. No matter how hard I train, no matter what I do, it will never be enough.
You are already enough, Cirilla. You are extraordinary.
I want to be like you.
Instead, it's treated as something to fear, with suspicion, and without control, detrimental to the people around her, leading to a more realistic reaction of fear and hatred, even from the main characters, heroes that we know and like. Approaching the final, Ciri is taken over by an evil entity looking for revenge on the Witchers, in which her mind is placed in a dream sequence of the last time she felt comfort and happiness, before the events that led her to meet Geralt and flee from the country. Whereas before she was somewhat reluctant and bored by the etiquette of the court, here she relishes the more simple life, dancing and talking about courtly things, seemingly coming to understand that life requires balance of hardening adventure and more structured, simple moments of royal life. When Geralt and Vesemir are trying to call her back in a moment that we've seen plenty of times before in other shows and works of fiction, where the possessed person hears the voice of their friends and breaks the spell in a refreshing twist, Ciri rejects them. She wants to stay in the dream, but the hero can't do that. Show weakness and the desire to simply stay in an easier life, choose the easier path. They're meant to inspire us by always taking the hard road. I gotta say, I was happy to see this. Letting her have a very human reaction and turn away from the hard but right path to avoid a world in which she's scared and lost. It's stuff like that that really connects us to characters, where writers often fear it will make us dislike them. Characters are supposed to be human beings, and not even human beings want to or are capable of being totally selfless, dedicating their very lives to the greater whole. I don't think there's anything wrong with showing that, even if it's just momentary. She does eventually decide to leave the dream behind and return to the real world, understanding that certain individuals have come to mean a lot to her. She sees them as her new family and she needs them just as much as she wants her old family back. By the end of the season, Ciri is not some immediate badass that she no longer needs the witches or teachers. No, she's still only just begun learning to fight, barely got any sense of place or confidence in herself, and is confused about the future, needing people around her to give her their strength and direction. This, Disney, is how Rey should have been written. This is a character. She's everything you promised with Rey's character. And whilst Rey now remains nothing but a reminder of what not to do, it's also a reminder of what characters like Ciri could easily have been, and still might if writers keep slipping back into the old tropes. If characters like Ciri are the future of strong female characters, the future is looking pretty bright in that department.